The alien forces of good and evil fight for control of Earth, with one child being the key. However, temptation gets the better of two enemies, accidentally triggering something that changes the trajectory of their war. Lean traverses a beach unclothed while on a call with her boyfriend, describing how her body is tanned from the sun. She dons a towel and invites her lover to visit her as she heads back home. Elsewhere, Johnny arrives at the shore and hauls his boat out of the water using his truck. He then races home, passing by Lean on his way. He parks the tractor near his home and gets the sack of crabs that he caught. From afar, his mother, Mrs. Boitel, greets him, disappointed that he only got one sack. In her arms is her grandson, Freddie, to whom Johnny kneels before his mother walks away with him. After securing his boat, Johnny heads to the street just as Lean saunters by, asking if he has any reception. He says yes, since he has a different service provider, making Lean complain about hers. She then mentions that this is the first time they met, given she moved in town 3 months ago. She learns that Johnny lived here all his life and is a fisherman. After introducing themselves to each other, Lean continues walking home. She calls her boyfriend again, only for her stepfather to ask for help with the groceries as soon as she approaches. She excuses that she is on the phone and walks the other way, complaining to her boyfriend about her stepfather. After her call, she comes across 3 kids who stand still and bow their heads as she passes by. She finds it odd but keeps going, soon finding herself before Johnny's home. There, she stands straight, then kneels while Johnny's mother holds Freddie by the window. Soon, the woman closes the curtains and Lean exhales. Johnny walks to her and asks what she's doing, but she dodges the question and asks if he has a kid. Johnny confirms that he does, and with that, Lean kneels again, asking if the Wayne is born. Johnny gazes at her, then raises his hand, announcing in an alien voice that the Wayne has indeed been born and that the mothership is at work at propagating the chosen one. After the announcement, Lean leaves just as Johnny's ex-wife Lou arrives with her boyfriend Rudy. Lou takes her child to the car and tells Johnny she'll return him in 2 weeks before driving off. As they drive, Lou scolds Rudy for smoking in the car while her son's inside. Rudy assures her that the Wayne is strong since he's his son too. Lou scolds him for this, so the man pauses, then suddenly yanks the steering wheel, causing the car to flip and crash. Soon, Rudy crawls out of the wreckage and walks to Lou's body. He then produces a laser sword and beheads her. Afterwards, he opens the door to the flipped car, revealing the unharmed child. He then slams his head on the door, knocking himself out. Sometime later in Johnny's home, the man, joined by 2 officers, watches the news in shock as the reporter details the car crash, noting the woman's mysterious beheading. Soon, the officers leave. That afternoon, Johnny's on horseback as he speaks to his knights. One of the knights thinks the crash was an accident, but Johnny believes it's a smokescreen. When asked what they'll do about it, Johnny declares that the council will decide for them. The men argue that the ones won't let the Wayne rule the world, so they'll eliminate him once he matures along with all of them. Johnny refuses to let that happen, so he declares that they'll fight them in summer. One of his men suggests asking the council about the accident, but Johnny argues that the police are on the case to figure out the beheading. The knights believe the humans won't solve it, but accepts his decision to fight. Meanwhile, at the crash site, Commandant Van der Weyden listens to Lieutenant Carpentier yammer about the beheading. Van thinks it's extremists who are responsible for it, and Carpentier agrees, sarcastically praising his intellect. However, as he turns, Van is already inside the car. During this, Rudy talks to the townsfolk, claiming that he doesn't remember anything about Lou's beheading since he was unconscious. The people, however, don't seem to be convinced. Just then, a woman in a swimsuit named Jane approaches and Rudy excuses himself. He bows to the woman, but she scolds him, not wanting the others to see the gesture. She then asks if Lou's head was neatly severed, and Rudy confirms this. Satisfied, she reminds him that Lou is demonic and they, the ones, must watch over the Wayne and eliminate him when the time comes. Rudy bows again, calling the woman a princess. However, Jane stops him again and just reminds him not to let the Wayne's evil influence spread to the town. She also warns him against the Black Knight, Johnny, noting that he's a powerful knight. Rudy thinks he can handle Johnny since winter's coming, making them stronger than the Zeros. Still, Jane tells him to be careful before diving into the sea. After submerging into the water, Jane emerges inside a Titanic cathedral-like ship in another dimension. She reports to an orb of light called the First that the Wayne's mother has been dispatched, reasoning that Lou is already infected by the Wayne, rendering her inhuman. The First acknowledges her actions, declaring their intent to eradicate the Zero from Earth. They believe this will prevent the corruption of its people and, through their effort, improve the human race. After her report, she returns to the sea and heads to the shore. The next day, Lean takes selfies in front of Johnny's home. The man catches her, commenting how she's always around. The two then kiss passionately before Johnny commands her to stay vigilant and watch out for the ones. That afternoon, Johnny and a knight ride into a forested area, which leads them to emerge in the Zero's mothership. There, they kneel before a black floating mass named Beelzebub before reporting that the Wayne is alive and well. They add that the humans are unaffected by the One's promise of virtue so far, thus preserving their depraved nature. The black figure warns them against the heroes and saints within the humans, then commands them to find a body for it to inhabit and visit the Wayne. As Johnny returns home, they pass Lean and her stepdad in a car on their way to go shopping. Elsewhere, Rudy asks Jane when she'll take him to the mothership. The woman explains that it's their duty to stay on Earth to improve the humans. The only other choice is the Void. Just then, a beachgoer approaches them calmly, but Jane alerts Rudy that it's a foe. The man brandishes his laser blade and beheads the man. Jane then pushes Rudy back as the man's body dissolves to black goo. Rudy asks how she could tell between Zeros and humans. So Jane answers that unlike the evil Zeros, humans are neither good nor evil. On another day, a panicked Lean runs to Johnny as she suffers a seizure. The man holds her down and assures her that she's turning into one of them. Soon, she calms down and Johnny holds her up. Aside from turning Lean, Johnny also witnesses Beelzebub's possession of an aged tour guide, allowing him to walk on Earth. Soon, Beelzebub meets the child outside Johnny's house, with the latter's mother thinking that he's their godfather. After meeting the Wayne, Beelzebub returns to the mothership and changes his clothes. He then sits in his throne and signals the musicians to play music, which prompts distorted black figures to spill in and dance to the tune. His party's interrupted when an alarm blares. A black mass reports that the ones are about to attack up front and asks if they should recall the forces on Earth. Beelzebub commands them to face the forces head-on and retain the forces on Earth, believing that when good weakens, evil grows strong. Back on Earth, Rudy asks when he'll turn fully into a one, and Jane assures him that it's almost time. Just then, the princess suddenly senses Johnny approaching. The fisherman walks with Lean along with a crowd of people, blocking his new recruit from their enemies as they pass. Jane also holds Rudy back from charging them. After they pass by, Jane warns Rudy not to be reckless since Johnny is powerful and Lean could defeat him even if she's still incomplete. However, she assures him that they won't back down regardless. On the beach, Johnny lays down to relax and grumbles about Jane's arrogance, though he admits it makes him want to bed her. The comment makes Lean smack him. To prepare for the fight, Jane later trains Rudy in sword fighting. The man struggles with it while his mother, Giselle, scolds him for being noisy. In the One's mothership, entities of light debate about their current influence on Earth. Upon learning that evil still proliferates despite their influence, the middle ones decide to visit Earth themselves. A smaller ship exits the mothership and arrives on Earth. Johnny witnesses this from his boat, so he goes ashore to investigate. Soon, Jane runs to the landing ship to escort the Queen as she arrives. She escorts her into town, passing by Johnny in his truck. Mrs. DeRue also passes by them, recognizing the Queen's vessel as the town mayor. They briefly chat about the woman's struggles due to her bad leg and the summer heat, but she's determined to keep going. The Queen finds her determination endearing. As they continue the tour, they pass by Lean's house where Jane points out that only the daughter is influenced, not her stepfather. The Queen states that this is why they must invade Earth, to cleanse their world of Zero's evil. Jane kneels before her to acknowledge this. Meanwhile, Beelzebub watches as the one ship attempts to crash into them. He commands his agent to veer left, dodging the ship. The agent asks if they're retreating, but Beelzebub wants them to think they do, making their next actions unpredictable. Back on Earth, an agent informs the Queen about how the Zeros fled the battle. She laments their cowardice and tells Rudy that Wayne must be eliminated as soon as possible before his evil proliferates. Just then, Mrs. Boitella approaches them, pushing the Wayne on his carriage. The Queen approaches them cautiously as Mrs. Boitella complains to the mayor about the broken water meter in their house. The Queen acknowledges her complaint all while the Wayne stares at her. Elsewhere, Johnny approaches the Queen's ship and examines the entrance. He then goes out but hides when the Queen and Jane approach. Soon, Jane parts with the Queen and Johnny follows the princess as she leaves. Eventually, Jane asks why he's following her and the man boldly offers to sleep with her, suggesting that it's only to make the most of their human bodies and nothing more. She falls into temptation and they do it right there in the open field. Afterward, they part ways with Johnny being true to his word. Later that day, Lean visits Johnny, finding him and his son playing in the yard. She questions where her new lover was last night, and Johnny claims he's been home. He then comments about seeing the Queen, thinking the ones are scouting because they're afraid. However, Lean doesn't care about this and makes mocking kneeling gestures to entertain the Wayne. From afar, Jane and Rudy watch them, with the latter commenting that he's itching to beat them. Irritated, Jane shushes him. As soon as Johnny and Lean leave, Rudy takes out his laser blade and sneaks into the house. The Queen watches this through the display in their cathedral mothership. Soon, Rudy rushes out with a Wayne and flees with Jane on a motorcycle. Witnessing this, Mrs. Bottella shouts to Johnny that his son has been taken. Alarmed, the father rushes, but they're long gone. They soon inform the authorities, and Carpentier heads outside with Van, with the former yammering about how suspicious Johnny is. However, when the father asks what they've found, they have nothing yet since they just started. After some time, Johnny visits Beelzebub and notices that he's still in human form. Beelzebub acknowledges the advantages of the human body and assures Johnny that they'll eventually find the Wayne, since evil always propagates through circumstance. With that, he commands his knight to seek his son and bring him back to his grandmother. Soon, Johnny returns to Earth. Accompanied by his knights, they head to Jane's house. Johnny alone breaks the door and storms in. Eventually, he emerges with Freddy and they all leave. Jane and Rudy rush out, with the latter complaining that he was caught off guard. The woman blames him for not protecting her and the Wayne, adding that Johnny touched her on his way out. Johnny soon takes his son to a car with his mother on the wheel. He tells her to be careful before she drives off with Freddy. As soon as the car leaves, Jane runs to Johnny, reminding him that they're at war and shouldn't be behaving crassly to each other. The man doesn't think much of it since they already made love, adding that Jane makes for a beautiful enemy. The woman fidgets at the compliment. Lean joins them, asking if she should fight Jane. Johnny assures her that he's got things under control, even kissing Jane to prove his influence on her. Unable to fight him because of her conflicting emotions, Jane breaks into tears and runs away. She heads to the Queen's small ship and reports their failure along with Johnny's overwhelming evil. The Queen scolds her since her virtue could have easily repelled Johnny. She then yells that they must triumph, ordering her to fight evil at all costs. Jane leaves the ship and watches it fly away. Just then, Van and Carpentier arrive, asking Jane if she saw a UFO. The woman feigns that she didn't, so they dismiss her. Out in the sea, Johnny and Lean go fishing while Jane and Rudy watch them by the shore. The woman gestures that it's finally time to fight them, which excites her companion. In outer space, Beelzebub is alerted that the mothership is nearing Earth, provoking cheers. Meanwhile, in the sea, Lean undresses and calls Johnny's attention before jumping into the water. Johnny thinks she's seducing him since she's jealous of Jane, though the woman denies this. Pitying her, Johnny helps her up the boat and makes love to her, finally giving her what she wants. After some time, Jane approaches Johnny, admitting that she's been chasing after him. The man reminds her that they're eternal enemies and therefore shouldn't mingle. Jane argues that the human form they took aren't enemies, and their mortal souls are still inside them. The man refuses to believe this, proclaiming himself a beast and a demon. The woman thinks he's lying, pointing out that he's a man down there despite calling himself a demon. She declares that she fears no demons, and to prove this, she boldly makes out with Johnny. After some time, Jane sees Johnny and his knights move out. She chases after them to see where they're heading, then returns to town. She and Rudy soon witness hundreds of ships fly across the sky, sparking the Zero's invasion. With that, Jane leads her comrade to the One's floating mothership outside town. The two head to the altar where they watch Johnny through the display as the final battle between the Zeros and Ones begins on Earth. Upon reaching the Zero's mothership, Johnny reports to Beelzebub that the Wayne is safe and that his troops are ready. Their leader exclaims that it's time for battle and heads to the edge of the ship to inspect his fighter ships and the knights. He celebrates the knights who have guarded the Wayne and scouted the Earth for them, exclaiming that the humans now belong to them. Johnny then leaves the mothership to pilot one of the fighter ships and leads the armada. Near the town, in the One's mothership, Jane and Rudy board their fighter ship and take flight, joining the squadrons. Their ship takes one last pass to the fields of their town before flying to space. Elsewhere, Carpentier and Van loiter near Johnny's household, unable to solve any of the mysteries. Lean passes by and Carpentier asserts his authority by asking for her ID. The woman dismisses them since she's going to the beach and has nowhere to place an ID. Above them in outer space, the Zero's armada faces off with the Ones. Johnny's and Jane's forces approach each other, only for a black hole to manifest. Panicked, Rudy asks what's happening, and Jane speculates that hers and Johnny's connection have caused their forces to converge, as if canceling each other out. Soon enough, the black hole swallows both armadas into itself and vanishes with a flash of light, ending their war for them. On Earth, Carpentier and Van lay on the ground as the black hole's force lifts their car off and creates a windstorm. When it disappears, their cars drop back before them. The ruckus causes Mrs. Bottella to come out with a Wayne on a carriage. She scolds the two men for making making too much noise, and with no other way to explain it, the men excuse themselves and board the destroyed car. The Wayne fumbles along, babbling that it's the end.